Hello, everyone there. Good morning. Happy lunchtime. Hopefully you can see me. Oh, there's people starting to show up. Yes, I wear, these are my Dollar Tree reading eyeglasses. Do you like them? My husband keeps losing them, so. I said it would start at 11:30. I have 11:27, so we'll give people another minute or two to hop on. Hopefully we won't get interrupted. I have a delivery person. They said they were coming between 10 and 11, and then just called and said they were running late. And they're not here yet, so we'll know that they're here because you will hear my dogs bark. So you will know that that delivery person is here, but hopefully now that he's already said he's going to be late, he will be really, really late and well past this time. So I'm going to talk about parent-teacher conferences, exciting stuff. And I will be taking questions. I have my laptop to my left, and actually I'm going to have to put my reading eyeglasses back on because I can't see without them. But I have my laptop over there, and the Facebook Live is on there. I'm taking it with my phone, but if you leave comments or questions underneath it, I will be able to read them. Okay, go sit down, please. Yeah, go sit down. So just another minute or two. It's saying 11:29. My stove is. So I should have locked them in their crates. Go to bed. Go. You know, a lot of folks say, oh, I like to ask you questions. I wish you'd do more Facebook Live. And the reason I don't is because I usually am dressed kind of like this and just bum and clothes. And I think, well, I don't want to be on camera because I'm just in my bum and clothes. And the days that I have to get dressed up and go to meetings, I'm not home. I'm at meetings. So it just never really works out. But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do the Facebook Live with my bum and clothes, and that's it. So, okay. All right, let's get started. We're talking about... I knew they were going to do that. Go somewhere. Come on. Talking about parent-teacher conferences. Give me 1 second. Come on, go. Yes, I have 2 really big noisy dogs, so that's them. Okay, talking about parent-teacher conferences and your IEP, and it's parent-teacher conference season. I know my schools started this week, some started last week, a lot of them run into next week, but give you a few tips about navigating the parent-teacher conference when you have an IEP, because it can be a little bit different. Our situations tend to be a little bit different. One thing I find from, I'm glad Michelle likes my dogs. One thing I find when you have a child with an IEP and therefore you're a parent who is often, you have more frequent contact with your school and you have more frequent contact with your team and your teacher, and you're always talking about the IEP, that we kind of fall into this rut as parents. And anytime we see school personnel, we feel compelled to talk about the IEP, right? Like, oh my gosh, I have my child's teacher, you know. So just keep in mind that you don't have to talk about your IEP every chance or every opportunity that you have to meet with your child's team or teachers or anyone from school. So I think that's just one rut that we fall into, that you don't always have to be talking about the IEP. Of course, the IEP is what, you know, kind of is this blanket or umbrella that should be covering your child's school day all day, every day. But that doesn't mean you need to talk about it all day, every day. So that's one thing I recommend, is to try to separate the two. They shouldn't be, parent-teacher conferences shouldn't be a mini IEP meeting. Let's face it, most schools only give you 15 or 20 minutes. So you can't get much done in that amount of time. I always recommend to my clients to really just use it as an information gathering session, and just to gather information about their progress, about their day-to-day activities, and things like that. but to not, you want to talk about accommodations and you want to talk about if accommodations are working. But this isn't the time to ask for more accommodations or ask for changes to the IEP. So one question I got from a parent recently on Facebook was that she said, I hear what you're saying and I understand that the conference shouldn't be a mini IEP meeting. However, the school is pushing me in this direction, and the school is saying that they want the special ed director there or the OT or some members of the IEP team. So to that I would say, like other things I say, like, is this really the hill I want to die on? If I don't want other members of the IEP team there, I can let them know. But if they refuse and say, no, these folks are coming, how far am I going to push this issue? I would just say definitely in your notes or when you RSVP to the meeting, or if you send an email to the teacher about the meeting, I would let them know for sure what your expectations are. And that, you can just say, hey, I review my child's IEP frequently, but I am not prepared to discuss any edits or addendums or changes to the IEP at this time. I look forward to learning about my child's progress and how they've done so far this school year or something like that. But again, how far you want to push it. If they say, well, we're going to have the principal there or we're going to have the special ed director there, how far you want to push that is up to you. And I would say on both sides, you're not going to find any, IDEA doesn't define this. Your state regs aren't going to define this as far as who can and who cannot attend a parent-teacher conference. So also keep in mind that, the concept of Hanlon's razor, which is assuming intent. And if a school tells you, we're going to have the principal there, we're going to have the special ed director there, blah, 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 or the school psychologist, things like that, don't assume that it's about you. Right away, parents get nervous and they think like, oh, well, my child must have done this, or my team hates me, or my team is trying to bully me, scare me, intimidate me, whatever. It may not be about you at all. It might be about the teacher. Maybe that teacher has a history of saying inappropriate things at parent-teacher conferences, or maybe that teacher has a history of promising things to parents at IEP meet or at parent-teacher conferences, or she promises that, okay, we're going to add this and that to the IEP, and she just promises things that are outside of her scope. So again, they may have someone there perhaps to watch the teacher and not you, okay? Someone's asking, how often should you keep in contact with your child's teachers, and how often can you change the IEP? You can change the IEP as often as it needs to be changed. I would request a formal meeting for the most part to assemble the team, unless it's a really simple item, in which case you can request what they call a no-meet addendum. And you can say, I talked with so-and-so's teacher about this, or I talked with the transportation department, and this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. Can this be added to the IEP without a meeting? Things can be added to the IEP without a meeting, so that can happen. As far as how often you should keep in contact, that depends on the child. My child is nonverbal, so we do have a home-to-school communication booklet that we both write in every single day. I write in it every morning before I send him off, telling them what kind of evening he had the night before and what kind of morning he had, that morning. And they, of course, send it home telling me how much he ate, what kind of day he had, how many seizures he had, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's contact that I have with them every day. You don't necessarily need that. I would get it defined in the IEP if it's been an issue. If the teacher doesn't, return your phone calls or answer your email, things like that, I would get it defined that you want a weekly progress sheet or something like that. And make it stupid easy for them. Not that anybody's stupid, but just make it stupid simple, because as soon as you start asking for things, like everyone freaks out, like, more work for me. Make it a simple checklist. Ate lunch, yes, no. Ate lunch. Mine is a check of some, all, none, how many times they went to the bathroom or whatever. Again, just make it a simple checklist so that it's not super time consuming for them, because we do ask a lot for our teachers. But yes, you can change it as often as you need to. I would try to keep it consolidated. Things change, social demands change, academic demands change. So there's certainly times when mid-IEP you're going to have to change things. But I wouldn't go in every month asking for changes, because you have to always project forward in that if you find yourself in due process. And if you find yourself in due process, if you're calling for IEP meetings and changes every month, you're going to look uncooperative. Okay? My hands look giant when I do that. Okay. If a child is failing in math and vocab, what can I ask? What can I demand or help? I need to ask. I'm at a loss. And Kim says she has a daily communication log, which helps a ton. They do help a ton. And then you can, it is. And I was actually, many of you know, in the process of doing an insurance appeal for my son regarding his seizures. And I was able to just go through his communication book and take pictures. I took pictures and converted it to PDF, but like all the data I needed was right there in this daily communication book. Hold on, I can't read all that. I have to read it on my laptop, not my phone. Okay, let me go through. Failing in math and vocab, what can you demand? So for Geraldine, I'm answering your question. You're going to have to get more information. First of all, grades are subjective for the most part. I mean, schools are definitely working toward being more objective, but grades are subjective. A teacher can give you an A, and a teacher can give you a C, and a teacher can give you an F. What you need probably is some evaluations. If you have issues with reading and math or vocab and math, there might be some dyscalculia going on, and with vocab, is it dyslexia? Is it dysgraphia? Is it decoding? Is it phonemic awareness? It's all these different things. So I personally would start with asking for more evaluations to get at the root of why the child has spelling and math questions or problems. I also would ask, you said the grades aren't doing so great. I would ask to see how they got to those grades. Okay. Why are these, I'm sorry, these are showing up on my Facebook page like out of order. What if the team is resistant to a daily communication book? As I said before, make it stupid easy for them. Give them a simple checklist. Make up a simple checklist of the things that you want to know. And, make it, again, things that they can just check, things that they can just circle so that they're not writing out a whole bunch of work. And think about why you need or want that information too, and how often really do you need that information. Because if your child is pretty verbal and can tell you everything that happened in a day, maybe you don't need a daily communication book. If they're not able to do that and you want to see it, I would keep pushing for it. Let's see. So now I'll get to Alyssa. Hi, Alyssa. My son has issues finishing his work and class on time. I've expressed my concern. The teacher has asked my son to come into conferences. Does the team have to have an IEP meeting? So yes, first of all, if you formally requested an IEP meeting, they need to respond to it in a reasonable amount of time. If they're not, I would keep going through the channels until that gets answered, up to the point, which hopefully you won't have to, but up to the point of, if they're not responding and scheduling a meeting, then you need to start filing complaints. I'm a big proponent of self-advocacy and children self-advocating and learning to express their needs. I don't know if parent-teacher conferences are necessarily the time to do that. One of the tips I give in the blog post, which I'll link in this event shortly, but one of the tips I give prior to going to a parent-teacher conference is to sit down with your child and say, hey, I'm going to parent-teacher conferences next Tuesday. Is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything you want me to know? Is there anything that I need to know? Are there any unfortunate surprises? I don't like surprises. So is there anything, do you think that maybe she's going to tell me that you wouldn't want me to know, or something like that? I don't know. I personally welcome the 15 or 20 minutes to talk about my child without him being there. So I don't know if you could schedule that for a different time. But I do think that if he's not finishing his work and you're working on solutions, I agree with the concept of, yes, he should be a part of the process and he needs to be able to express himself and tell her what's working and what's not working, and be a part of those solutions so that everybody's involved. Again, I just don't know that I like it being during parent-teacher conferences. So I'm sorry that's not a more definite answer. Then again, as I always say, I'm not sure that's the hill I'd want to die on either, if that's when they want to do it. Perhaps you could ask if they have any open slots and you could do a back-to-back, and maybe he can go out in the Centrum, or you could go back another time and talk with her privately, I don't know, or on the phone. If you want that, you know what, and if you don't need that 15 minutes to talk to her just by herself, then yeah, take them. So, all right, so these comments are like disappearing, which is weird. Okay. Parent requests an IEP meeting, and then they reply, we want to meet for an informal meeting. So they might be, it is hard. It's hard to gather together a full team of a full IEP team. You're talking in most cases 5 to 10 people. Teachers don't have a lot of prep periods during the day, and they don't have a lot of prep time after school or before school. So let's acknowledge that, yes, it is hard to gather together a full team. That being said, if you've asked for it, yeah, I mean, they have to do it. It is part of when a parent asks for an IEP meeting. Yes, the school has to respond. If they're responding that they want to do an informal meeting and you're willing to do that, again, the full team doesn't have to meet to make changes to the IEP. I still would follow the process as far as this is the list of parent concerns that I wish to discuss. And, at the end of that meeting, formal or informal, you're going to be presented with something from the school as far as this is what we're willing to do. And yes or no. So you can ask for it on a PWN or not, and proceed from there. Hi, Monica. Let's see. Special education teachers didn't give me any support or service after high school. I graduated high school. I feel like they had big discrimination against me. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Leah. All I can say is that please take a look in your community and look at, vocational services. Most states have them, and see what you're going to have to do. One thing I have learned from adult service agencies in my county is that the onus really is on us as parents and as individuals ourselves with disabilities. The onus is on us to create our future and create our vision of what our future is going to look like. If you leave it up to the high school teachers, and even if you leave it up to the adult service providers, it's not going to happen. There's not enough out there, so you're going to have to do it yourself. Son is at a third grade. Son is in third grade, reads on a first grade level. Common thing. I am dealing with a client right now, in person, in real life, who's several years behind in reading ability. I would, if the strategies and supports that are in place right now, oh, my phone's ringing. Shut up, go. If the supports and services that are in place right now are not allowing him to progress, I would ask for an independent eval rather than just blindly asking for more services or more reading instruction time, things like that. I would ask for evals to make sure that you're really at the root of what the reading issue is and addressing that. The other option is what I've told this client of mine, because the school has basically said, no, this is what we're offering, like it or lump it. And the parent has the choice of, okay, does she want to file for due process? Or I found her some resources to look for there's a private Wilson instructor, not too far from us, about 10 miles away. But there's someone who teaches Wilson privately on her own, and she's going to pursue that, see what that costs and if that's feasible for her family, and then she'll just do it on her own. You have to do what's best for your family. How do you get a transportation request? Oops, hold on. Oh, my 17-year-old doesn't think he should walk by himself or take the bus by himself. Well, there is transportation training available, and I don't know how rural where you live. Where I live, there is transportation training available, and they test kids and evaluate kids on how well they could take a bus, take a cab, take a subway as necessary. And then there's also training in those aspects of how to take a bus, take a cab, those kind of things. So like any other service, if you want that service for your child, you have to demonstrate need. So if you want him to have transportation, you have to demonstrate that he needs transportation. And what that looks like. If it's a safety risk, then it's a safety. I would bring that to their attention. Okay, your daughter, 6th grade, student-led conferences. Oh, lovely. Okay. You like the idea because she's more comfortable advocating for herself with me there, but that's great. I love that idea. When I read the first couple of lines, the rest was hidden, and I was like, uh-oh, student-led conferences. But I'm glad it's working out for you, and she is learning to self-advocate. I like that idea. But you also talk to her teachers one-on-one. Yeah, I do want to have that. I still want to have that private time. Kids are still kids. My son still is only 9, and I want to talk to his team, without him. 3rd grade son allowed 2 15-minute breaks that he has to earn. She doesn't have time for this accommodation. That shouldn't even be, you don't even need to wait until the next meeting for this. Not having time isn't a valid reason to not implement the IEP. None of us has time to implement the IEPs, but we do it because the kids need it. So I would just, figure out a way with her to help make it happen and ask her, do you need to get your son a watch that goes off every day at 10 and 2 so that he remembers to take this break, so that maybe she doesn't have to remember it. Again, make it stupid easy for her so that it's not more work on her, because she's already under the impression that she doesn't have time to do this. But it's got to happen, especially if he needs the breaks and he needs it for staying on task. It's almost like saying, I don't have time to give him his medicine. If this is what he needs for focus and attention, it's what he needs. Limit computer time. They keep putting daughter. Like anything else, I would do the request in writing. I would make sure it's explained thoroughly and clearly for them, why you don't want her on the computer that much time, how it's detrimental to her, and just ask for it. We're in the process of moving. I know, it stinks. Change is hard. Having a hard time getting my son's teachers to communicate with me. I've asked for a communication log, keep getting pushback. But I can't if I don't know what he's learning. I would keep pushing, do a formal request in writing. Also, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Find out or use what is already available to you. I know our school uses Schoology. A lot of schools use Class Dojo and programs like that, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Use what they're already, take what they're already offering and build it into that, as far as, hey, I want to check on Schoology every day to see what he's done. And that really should, then you may not need like a separate communication log if it's put in Class Dojo or Schoology or whatever it is that your school uses. There's a lot of different apps and programs out there that schools use. What happens if I don't sign the IEP? Nothing. Nothing. I know, I get it. And I have a whole blog post on this about parents not wanting to sign an IEP. And of course, it makes sense that you don't want to sign a document you don't agree with. Like, I am not signing it. I do not agree with this. I get it. I get the statement that you want to make, but it doesn't really mean anything. Most states, I think it's only like California and maybe Massachusetts. I'm not even sure. Most states, it means absolutely nothing if you don't sign the IEP. Nothing. So you haven't really made it any kind of grand statement. It just shows that you didn't sign the IEP. In Pennsylvania, it can actually be worse and can be really detriment to your case, because in Pennsylvania, when you're presented with your PWN, which is what here in Pennsylvania, we call it a NORUP, but if you don't sign it, it automatically goes into effect in 10 days. Yeah. So by not signing it, like, I do not agree with that, I'm not signing it. Well, great. Now it's going to go into effect in 10 days. So that's what you've done. So sign it. You can sign it and disagree. You have options. You can file for mediation. You can ask for another meeting. You can file for due process if you have the data to support it. But yeah, sign it and disagree. And keep pushing. If you think the child needs an FBA, keep pushing. Do I do Facebook Live a lot? No, I don't do it as often as I know everybody requests. I will probably start to do more since it's getting to be cold and wintry out. My daughter was in a special ed pre-K last year, tested out, but still has an IEP. Oh, teacher told me at conference that her IEP doesn't exist because she's not in a special ed class. So that's a good one. I haven't heard that one in a while. IEPs exist everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. Needs drive IEPs, not placement. It's not that only the self-contained kids get IEPs. So, yeah, put the onus on her. Ask her to show you where it says that only children in self-contained classrooms get IEPs. Or ask her for the PWN and notice you should have received and evaluations. IDEA is very specific about you have to do evaluations before exiting a child from an IEP. So ask her, where those are. If your child has been exited from the IEP, okay, great. Where is that information? Because you never received it. Okay, currently working on an IEP. Oh, come on. Left classroom, went to hide. Yes, if she's eloping, just submit it as a concern. We don't wait. Fail first is not required. We don't wait till a child runs out of the building before we address an issue. I mean, if they leave a classroom and they're not staying on task, and especially if you didn't say how old she is, I'm kind of assuming that she's small. But I mean, we don't wait and think oh, it's cute when they're in kindergarten and first grade and hiding under the desk. It's not that cute when they're 16. So you want to get this solved now and just ask for an IEP meeting, and these are the issues you want to discuss. She sounds like she needs an FBA. What's causing the elopement and what can be done why would a person place an angry... Oh, don't, you know what, Letitia, don't worry. You know what, sometimes people just tap things. It happens to me all the time when I'm thumbing through my phone that I'm like, I didn't mean to like that. It happens. Don't take it personally. So, Okay, so make sure you have your questions lined up for your teacher, for your parent-teacher conferences. Hold on, I had them right here. Let me get in this other tab. You want to have questions and concerns. You know, you're going to your parent-teacher conference to talk about your child. So you want to talk about your child. That makes sense. You want to have questions and concerns ready to discuss. But at the same time, it's not a time to just open the floodgates and do this whole dump, you know, that can't be solved in 15 minutes. But you want to, ahead of time, if you're, especially if you're new to the school building or new to the school district, you can ask the teacher ahead of time, you know, what you should expect. Do you need to bring anything? And tell her that if she's going to show you some work that you would like to have a copy. I know the first time I went to my son's, and this is my non-disabled child, I went to his parent-teacher conference, and the teacher laid out all this stuff, and she was showing me, you know, this, and this is how he's doing, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, and I'm looking it over, and then she's like, oh, no, you can't keep it, and she pulled it all back, and I was like, well, I barely got to look at it, you know, so, that was a learning moment for me that I needed to set the expectations that if you're going to show me some things, I'd like to keep them or at least take them home to show his father or whatever. If there's definitely something you want to discuss as far as, like, let's say you did do Wilson on your own and you've been doing Wilson tutoring on your own, you know, you can tell her that and say, hey, you know, he's been doing private tutoring in the Wilson Reading Program this school year. I'd like to know how you know, I'd like to talk about how you think he's done so far. If she gives you some really serious concerns, I don't like surprises or gotchas or anything anywhere. You know, not at IEP meetings, not at parent-teacher conferences. Nowhere do I like to just, you know, get a whole bunch of bad news gotchas in a situation. But if that happens, I would just, you know, note the concerns, make notes of them, and say to her, you know, well, perhaps I need to request an IEP meeting. And I would definitely follow up with an email documenting the information, such as, you know, if you go to a conference and then you learn and they say, oh, well, your daughter's been eloping and hiding under the teacher's desk at least once a week all school year, you know, document that in an email and say, why did you wait until the middle of November to tell me this? That kind of thing. Be on time. I personally don't think you should bring an advocate. I've gone to parent-teacher conferences as an advocate. I probably wouldn't do it again unless it was like the most extreme of circumstances. I honestly felt, and it wasn't any big moment at any of the times that I did attend, but I just felt like it was kind of wasting my clients' money, even though they really wanted me there. It kind of felt silly to charge them for my time of going there when I just kind of sat there and didn't, you know, most of the time it just confirms what we already know as far as schoolwork. So it's just, I just don't think it's a time. And also it changes the tone. People get nervous when there's an advocate there. They do. Because again, they do that assumed intent. Well, she assumes, you know, the teacher assumes that you think she stinks when you bring an advocate, right? I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. So you don't want to kind of change that atmosphere of the conference. Again, speak with your child ahead of time. Ask them if they have anything that they want you to discuss at the meeting. Take pen and paper. Don't bring small kids unless it's like absolutely necessary, or like you have to bring a sleeping infant. That's, you know, one thing, but don't bring kids to run around. It just, you can't pay attention. And then share the information with your child. Let them know what you discussed and how it, you know, how it affects them, what they have to say about it. Sorry, I'm just looking. I don't know why it's, this is annoying. Okay. Currently working on an IEP. Oh, okay, wait, we did that one, the eloping one. We did that one. IEP conference notes were documented incorrectly. I have a blog post called After the IEP Meeting. You can search for it on the blog, After the IEP Meeting. I know we're all exhausted after meetings. I get it. I really do. But you have to, within 24 hours, say, hey, a lot of information was tossed around at yesterday's meeting. I want to be sure that we're all on the same page as far as what was discussed. And then just bullet point every single item that you discussed. The good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, we agreed this. We disagreed this. The team decided that an FBA, or the team besides every team member but me, just felt that an FBA was not warranted at this time. But you want to document every single incident or every little thing that you discussed, so that the notes or the IEP that you receive is what you're expecting and there are no surprises. The specifics that you ask, and submit your parent concerns when you RSVP to an IEP meeting. Put this is my list of parent concerns that I wish to discuss at the meeting. And in fact, for many clients and myself, would you sit down? Sorry. I put very specifically, this is my list of parent concerns that I wish to discuss at the meeting. I am sending them to you in electronic format so that you can just copy and paste them into the parent concerns section of the IEP. That lets them know in no uncertain terms that you expect to see those parent concerns in the IEP. And they can say, oh, we demand it in paper. I will bring a signed hard copy when I come to the meeting. Okay? So it's just, you know what? It's just one of those things that I've just come to accept. And once you get into the habit of doing it, it doesn't necessarily feel like a ton of extra work. I know it is, but it's just like, hey, this is my life. These are the cards I was dealt. I have to do this. Because I get that from a lot of parents. Well, it's so much extra work. Yeah, it is. Sorry, it is. But we have to do it. And as I tell my 9-year-old, focus on what you can control. My son is in 3rd grade, struggling academically. Is it possible to put him back in 2nd grade? I wouldn't, especially not mid-school year. I mean, this is a personal decision. But it sounds like he's just not being supported properly. Could he be successful with the proper supports? Maybe. But there's no... It's one area where, again, every child is different. You know your child. There's always going to be that exception to the rule, and you're always going to find that one parent who says, well, we did that and it worked out great. But by and large, the data says that retaining a child doesn't, it's socially and emotionally, it's not good for them, and it doesn't always help. It sounds like he needs the right supports. I'd ask for different supports, or take a look at what he's getting, or ask for more evaluations to get better supports. Yes, and I have All About Me sheets. This is for Storm's comment. I have All About Me sheets, and I have a blank snapshot IEP, and I have a bunch of resources on the blog if you want to do a one sheet for your child to introduce them. Email. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Do I have a choice as to what school my son goes to if I feel our homeschool doesn't offer what he needs? So you said you have an ARD, which leads me to believe, Karen, that you are in Texas, I think. I think Texas is the only state that does ARDs, but I do not know if Texas has school choice. Placement is actually the last decision in the IEP process. I know a lot of parents go there first with their brains, but it's actually the last decision. First, you determine the child's needs with evaluations. Then you draw up the IEP with the goals and supports and services based on the needs from the evaluation. Then you look at the whole picture and say, what placement is best suited to implement this IEP? So, if you're looking at placement first, just work backwards. What are they doing at that placement that your child needs? What is so different about this particular placement, or what can your child get at this placement that they cannot get in their current placement? And then craft an IEP that would most likely have to be implemented there. Does that make sense? At 12, okay. No, I mean, transportation isn't by itself that much harder to get. You just have to demonstrate need. Yes, I did discuss this already, but yeah, just demonstrate need. IEPs are based on needs, so you have to have the data as to why your child needs that, and then do all your requests in writing. Why does the school nurse have to be in the IEP? I don't know. First of all, I don't ask why. I don't assume intent, because we'll never know. I don't know. I wouldn't. It's just one of those things. I think maybe you're just gonna have to let it go. It's kind of hard to get if the school has deemed a person, a school staff member has knowledge of the child and needs to be on the IEP team. It's very difficult to get them removed, and I kind of find like not always worth the battle unless the person is really, ornery, belligerent, makes the process difficult. It's just not a battle I choose to fight, because it's just not when parents don't have a lot of rights in this area to say, I don't want this person in the IEP meeting. And then it takes the focus off the IEP meeting and your child, and it puts it on like a different issue, if that makes sense. During the conference, how do I actually find out how my child is doing? Great question. So this is for Amy, and this is a great question. During the parent-teacher conference, how do I actually find out how my child is doing? I would respond when you RSVP to the parent-teacher conference, if there are particular areas that you want to discuss, I would let the teacher know that, hey, I'm anxious to come to the conference. In particular, I want to know how you feel my child is doing with, letters and social skills, so that she comes prepared to talk about that. And also, I would take a look at your IEP and there should be a progress monitoring section, and 99% of the time I find that the progress monitoring section usually says that basically you're going to get a progress monitoring something when report cards come out. It's not usually much more than that. So if you want more than that, you can ask for it. And you can ask for it either formally or informally. And you can just ask that, ask the teacher at the conference, like, hey, would it be cool if I called you every other Tuesday or one Tuesday a month to discuss, issues? Or is it okay for me to email you on Tuesdays to check up, or Fridays, whatever day, to see how things are doing? If it's not in there, you just have to ask for it. And you can ask her, say, what does this look like? I've read his IEP, which again, you don't want it to be a mini IEP meeting, but you can say, have notes for yourself that, his IEP says he's receiving this. How is that being implemented in the classroom? Do you feel it's working? What does it look like for him? And yes, you can ask for an IEP meeting. And if you're not sure that you even want changes to the IEP at this time, don't call for a full meeting. Just ask to look at the team list and think about, which one or two people you'd like to chat with, and just say, I'd like to have an informal meeting with Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Jones to discuss, whatever. Okay. Do they have the right to rush us? No. No, and I've gotten very pushy. I don't have to get pushy for myself, but I have to get pushy with clients. And I just say, hey, in the past, you've only allotted 45 minutes for a meeting, and past experience tells me that we are not going to complete what we need to complete in 45 minutes. So please give me a time slot that will allow us 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever. Because particularly for parents who are taking off work to attend this kind of stuff, you don't want to take off twice. I mean, that's ridiculous. So, nope, just ask for it. And yeah, I don't allow rushing. And yes, that's a great answer. Kathy responding to, can you walk me through what his day is like? Where does he go? Who's he with? Not to rush it. Don't sign anything till you know. Well, not signing anything, but that doesn't do much. It really doesn't do anything. Can you ask for documentation of daily computer time? I mean, you can ask for anything. People say that to me all the time. Can I ask for this? Can I ask for that? You can ask for the moon. I mean, you can ask for anything on an IEP. Are you going to get it? I don't know. Why do you need that documentation of daily computer time? What is that going to do for you? What do you need? What are you going to do with that information? Is there an underlying issue that you need to fix rather than keep it focused on the child and what they aren't receiving? Get your SPED children out of public schools. Figure out a way to get it done. Oh, aren't you a peach? Lisa, here's a tip. Private schools aren't required to provide special education, so they're only really welcome in the public schools. So maybe if you took a little bit of time to understand the situation before being a you-know-what. Okay, won't focus on her. Can a conference and an IEP combined? I wouldn't. Parent-teacher conferences are at most 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes you might get into a heated discussion and then, yours runs late and you make everybody else late. But I keep them separate. I use the conference for really information gathering, progress monitoring, voicing a few small concerns. But if you need an IEP meeting, call for an IEP meeting, okay? Because they are not following the limited computer learning time. Okay, so again, keep it focused on your child. What is or isn't your child receiving? If your child if they're not following the limited computer time and they're giving her too much, what is that affecting? I mean, the time's got to be coming from somewhere. So what isn't she receiving? And keep it focused on that. Okay? I want to know how common it is. You know what? It doesn't matter how common it is. I don't think it's that common, but I don't think that's really your question. It sounds like the second part of your question is your question. So your principal's sitting in on the parent-teacher conference and you're not even told. I would, say that. Sometimes as moms or as parents, we have to step outside of our comfort zone and say confrontational things that maybe aren't part of our personality. Oh, hello. I was unaware that you were going to be here. Thank you. Call them on it. But again, don't assume that it's about you. It might be about the teacher. And I said this earlier in the Facebook Live. It might not be about you at all. It might be about the teacher. And maybe that teacher has a history of terrible parent-teacher conferences. And maybe they get a lot of complaints about her. Or maybe she says inappropriate things. She might promise things that she can't follow through on. There could be a lot of things going on besides you. Now, if you're 1000% sure that it's, only you, and that the principal only sits in on your parent-teacher conference or only on special ed parent or only with special ed parents, I'd make a note of that in an email, that you feel singled out, and that you're uncomfortable, that you don't understand the reason. I don't know. Again, it's you don't have, there's nothing you can point to as a parent and say, hey, it says right here that, parent-teacher conference, blah, 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 no principals. There's nothing you can point to. There's not a lot of support that you get. And all I can say is that that's just the state and the nature of special education today. Everyone's on edge. A lot of contentious relationships. a lot of lawsuits going on, and that's just how it is. So just, rise above it, be the bigger person, and, handle it like a professional. Again, it should just be an information gathering session. It's not a mini IEP meeting. So, fine. If that parent or if that principal wants to sit in and listen to how your kid's doing, let them. If the IEP is at the point of a draft, can you ask for an IEE? Yes, you can ask. You have about a year to ask for an IEE. So yeah, you can ask. A conference should be curriculum-based discussion, right? Not IEP goals. Yeah, of course the two, when you have, like I said, when you have an IEP, it's the umbrella that covers your child's entire day, or it should be. So certain things are going to come up. Just don't view it as an IEP meeting. You're not there to discuss the IEP specifically and make changes to the IEP. You're there to gather data on your child, see how it's going, and you know what? If it's not going well, then yeah, you need to revisit the IEP. And if, for example, if your teacher says, he's really not focused on task, and he's not finishing, he's not completing, he's never on task, and the child hasn't had an FBA, well then you need to go home and request an FBA, because that failure to stay on task is affecting the schoolwork. Will the special ed teacher be there? I don't know. I'd ask. If you want her there, I'd ask. If you have those co-taught classes or those inclusion classes where you have one special ed teacher and one reg ed teacher, I would definitely ask. And again, if it's important to you to have her there or not have her there, make note of that. What's an FBA? An FBA is a functional behavior assessment. And I have a full explanation on my website. If you go to adayinourshoes.com and just Google, or on the search bar, put in FBA, it will come up. And I have a post about FBAs, what they're done, how they're done, what they are, all that good stuff. And that blog post is actually not written by me. It was written by a BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst. So it was an actual behavior person explaining what an FBA is and what to expect from one. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up. If you go to the site, I have a post on parent-teacher conferences. Again, go to adayinourshoes.com. You want to read about parent-teacher conferences and how to prepare. There's another post on goals versus grades. Okay, because you want to kind of just refresh your memory, because again, parents get into this thing with grades, and grades are subjective. Okay, I've had a lot of parents. I just had one. Where was I? Oh, I was speaking to a group up in Delaware County a few weeks ago, and mom got me afterwards, and basically the whole situation's like a disaster. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and she's listing all these things that are going so poorly for her child. And then she said, but I don't get it, because she's getting all A's. She gets all A's and B's. And I was like, yeah, grades are subjective, and you haven't complained all school year. Despite having all these issues, you haven't contacted the team once because she's getting all A's. And she's like, oh, you mean they could just be pushing her through? And I was like, yeah, it happens. It shouldn't happen, but it does. So anyway, and again, in the search bar, if you put in grades, you just give you some thoughts to wrap your brain around in discussing grades, because that's one big component of parent-teacher conferences, is that you learn what your child's grades are so far. So you want to know what the grades are measuring. That's the main thing. And I have another post that you can look at. Just search the word homework, because that's another big discussion point at parent-teacher conferences. Well, this is what his homework looks like. What is the purpose of homework? What is it measuring? Is it pre-teaching? Is it reteaching? Is it repetition? You want to know, what is the purpose of this homework? How is it being graded? How is it affecting the grade? A lot of projects and a lot of homework measures executive functioning skills. So is this homework and are the grades, are they measuring content knowledge, or is it measuring my child's executive function skills, right? Because that's a big difference. The one thing I found is that grades with our kids very rarely measure effort, right? Because I have so many moms who come to me in tears, and the kids are in tears on a daily basis because they're putting in 3 or 4 hours worth of work and they don't have good grades. Okay? The grades do not reflect the effort and the amount of work they're putting into this homework. So if that's an issue, you need to work on fixing that and let the teacher know what's going into this work. Okay? And come up with a system of communication for that, because all the teacher sees is the completed project. Okay, so if you're helping with it and if you're doing a lot of the work, they need to know that. Because all they see is a completed worksheet. And if it took 90 minutes and a whole lot of tears to do that one worksheet, the teacher needs to know that. If the teacher needs to know if you read and reread and explained that worksheet to them, okay? Because and that's what gets discouraging for our kids, is that their homework and their grades does not reflect the effort that they put into it. And that's a shame, because our kids work harder than anybody else at a lot of this stuff. So, okay, I'm going to wrap it up for today. I will be doing, I'll maybe try to get, I don't think I'm going to get one more in before Thanksgiving. I will definitely get in 1 or 2 more Facebook Lives before the holidays. And then more in January and February. So, oh great, now you can see me scratching my ear. I had an itch. But that's it. Thanks for tuning in.